All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the 10th annual virtual residency workshop. I'm your host, Henry Neiman. It is Thursday, June 27th, 2024, and this is our final session of the day. The panel is What I Wish I'd Known When I Started as a CI Facilitator, and Marcelina Nogales of Florida State has voluntold to be our moderator. She might get swapped out if Eduardo is able to join us. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started. And Marcelina, why don't you have the rest of the panel introduce themselves?
Sure, that sounds good. I guess so. In first of our panelists, Fesezha, can you tell us a bit about yourself, what institution you're from, and then what your role is there?
Thank you, Marcelina. Can you hear me? I have a little bit of throat problem, but I'll do my best. My name is Fasiha Abebe Akele. It simply means joy bloomed and multiplied. So I am an assistant professor of genetics and bioinformatics at an HBCU, a very small university in North Carolina, known as Elizabeth City State University. We currently host about 2,400 students, of which about 150 or so are in biology. As a graduate of a bioinformatics program, I am required or expected to carry the weight when it comes to computational needs for myself and for my colleagues. So my role is a de facto CI facilitator without the perks or the benefits for it. So that is where I am, and I am in you can call me a mid-career CI facilitator. Well, does that cover it?
That's perfect, thanks. Dodi up next.
Yes, my name is Dodi Heriadi. I'm happy to be here to learn more from the attendees as well as from other panelists. So I work at the Center for Research Computing at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana. My title is user support manager, but pretty much I'm a CI facilitator. I've been with Notre Dame for over 5 years, and then I've been in other places as well. Anything else?
I think that's perfect. Thank you guys for being here. So let's see. I guess, yeah. So in terms of the list, I'm also a panelist, so I'll just do my intro really quickly. I'm the software team manager at the Research Computing Center at Florida State University. And the main research that I help outside of STEM is focused on digital humanities, which is also my personal research interest. So next on our list is Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Perez, and I am out at UT Southwestern, but I'm also out at UT Dallas. I'm a professor out at UT Dallas, and I am the director for research computing out at UT Southwestern. Been in the business now going on 23 years, and I really enjoy high performance computing. I was there at the very beginning. And I really enjoy talking to my colleagues, such as yourselves. And so, welcome everybody, and it will be my pleasure to speak with you today.
Thanks, Jerry. And then lastly, Alex.
Hey, I'm Alex Town. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Had some issues with that yesterday. So my name's Alex Townsend. I'm one of the research computing facilitators at the Research Computing Center at Florida State. I've been at FSC, I've been at RCC for about 5 years now, and Marcelina's my boss.
Well, thank you all for being here, and we'll get started with the first question. And then basically how this works is if there are questions that come through in the chat, we'll talk about them, and then if not, we'll follow our other questions that we have. So first question is, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self when you were just starting as a CI facilitator, what advice would you give your younger self? And then that's open to everyone.
I can start. Yeah, if I would go back in time, I would tell my younger self to really focus on building strong relationship with researchers and to understand their needs and challenges that they I mean that's very important when you provide support to these researchers. I mean my background is in computational chemistry, and we have users that know them from almost every department on campus. I mean, I can understand molecular modeling, but if someone asks me, how do you do, for example, uh, weather modeling or like fluid dynamics, then that's I cannot rely on my knowledge from my grad school. So at least I need to have a basic understanding of different fields, and I mean over time I learned that I I don't know in like in very detail, but at least basic knowledge of these areas. And I would also try to I mean invest more time in learning, continuous learning, because things keep changing. Things keep changing, and yeah, I mean that's at least I can start with that.
And I would like to add to that that when when I started out, we didn't have the luxury of like we didn't have the luxury of GitLab, and we didn't have the luxury of a lot of the tools that we pretty much take for granted today. Even our schedulers. Like today, I think most of us are using Slurm or SunGrid Engine or some kind of distributed type application uh, appliance within their clusters. At the very beginning, we were just basically creating scripts and files. I don't know if you all remember MPitch from the very beginning. We had to do all that by hand. Nowadays, the kids are spoiled with all the already prepackaged, applications. And so I would think one of the first things I would tell myself, if I were to go back in time, is to let myself know it gets better from here. And I think we can tell ourselves that now, even with the newer conceptual technologies coming out, such as the higher level AI coupled with the higher level GPUs, and then pretty soon the commodity quantum computing that's coming. It's going to be difficult at first, like it was at the beginning 20 years ago, where we had to do things by hand, and a lot of conceptual things had to be done by hand. But it gets better because tools will be developed to allow us to make our jobs much more doable. So I would just tell myself, calm down. Because when I first started my career, I was always on edge because I always thought I was doing something wrong. But the fact of the matter is a lot of things weren't even invented yet. So there was really no way to do anything wrong. Um, so that's one thing I'm going to tell myself. It gets better. And as we develop our tools, stay on top of them. And so that's one thing that I've been doing is looking for looking for the newer tools that will give me the edge as far as utilizing the resources that we currently have and the people that we currently have, because tools help bridge that gap between expertise and because not everybody, is a hyper super genius in computing, right? A lot of folks are at the technical level. Some people are at the administrative level, but these tools will help us close the gaps between knowledge and functionality. So back in the day, we didn't have those tools. Today, we almost have too many tools. But I would say pay attention to those and make those part of your toolkit. Develop a toolkit, and that's what I did instinctively as a young system administrator. Was start building my toolkit of compiler tools, debugging tools, things that eventually became commercial products. It was like a knee-jerk reaction to create a toolbox full of my applications that I would use from my daily operations. So just keep telling yourself it gets better from here.
Thank you. And I think for me, I would I mean, I've only been in the space like 5 years. So when I started out, I was still doing my doctorate in scientific computing, and I was very much in sort of like the academia track. And then I realized, oh wait, I can do more than just teach. And so I think what I would tell myself going back 5 years ago would be develop your communication skills, because communication skills are almost more important than anything else, because that those are the skills that help you develop those relationships. They're the ones that help you develop and maintain those relationships, and they'll almost get you through life. I mean, and the technical skills are important, don't get me wrong, but you can't learn those at the expense of communication, because the communication is that's what's going to be the difference between being good at the job and struggling a lot with the job.
So if I may jump in, I concur with Alex. Um, and the reason for that is, as much as we need technical skills, the most important things are the interpersonal dynamics that allow us to put people with different backgrounds, with different funding levels, and with different organizational structure. Like some researchers come with their own self. Some come with a bunch of graduate and undergraduate students and so on. So knowing all this and playing the interpersonal dynamics card is the best thing. So I would tell my younger self, which is not that young, that focus on interpersonal dynamics, because that is what will push meaningful change within the organizations.
Well, and I think to go back to like just I guess just starting off as a CI facilitator and not knowing a lot about HPC as my younger self did not, like I think a piece of advice I would give them is like there's a lot to learn. There's the sphere is always changing. So much like Jerry says, build your toolkit, but also like be kind to yourself, because the advice that our team gets whenever anyone is onboarded is it will take you a year to get comfortable with just our system, and to know that there's so many different HPC systems out there with different configurations is a whirlwind, but knowing the basics always helps, and like building those basics and foundational skills will be super helpful moving forward. So for this advice, the next question is, if you were talking to a brand new CI leader right now, would you give them the same advice that we just spoke about? If not, what advice would you give them instead?
I'd like to start with that. More action than advice, especially if, let's say, for example, I was exiting a role and someone was going to take my place. I wanted to make sure that there was documentation in place. You know, how do we help our users? What are our SOPs? What do we expect from the role? So, and of course, that would generally be the responsibility of their management. But I think it's really good to give the path, to help them take the torch, so to speak, and carry it forward. Because everybody here today, whether you're a CI administrator, whether you're a CIO, you're leading the path for the future for your subordinates who will one day replace you. And so I would say, as a responsibility to not only to your field, but to the greater body of knowledge. Then I think that's what most of us with PhDs do, right? We add to the body of knowledge. We need to prepare for the future and leave something behind for those who come after us. So I would say the responsible thing would be to have something tangible for them to take, to learn, to read, and so they can then apply that. So that there's a very, they won't necessarily have to take a year, but maybe 6 months to get acclimated to the situation, and also maybe have a who's who of your I would say your top 10 customers. The people who use your cluster the most, use your resources the most, that will actually like give a breakdown of their research, where they went to school at, the name of their application, how much data does it use, how often is it used on the cluster. Things like that can help you be a more cognizant, if not effective CI facilitator slash leader. But yeah, so I would pass that all down if I were to exit a role and someone were to take my place.
I would add to that just to say that with to reiterate, document everything, and not just because it'll leave a good legacy, but because if you're anything like me, you're gonna forget, and documentation helps you remember. I try to document everything because it sort of like offloads it from my memory. And then I can and then if I forget, I'm like I don't have to sit there for an hour going, "Oh, what did I do?" I can go look it up.
Yeah, I agree with the documentation. Totally agree. And I would also like to add that if I were to advise a new leader, that they need to be patient and persistence, and ask them to. I mean, I was also try to answer questions chat box. Is ask them to have this like networking with other communities and understand like what other centers are doing, and so I mean to make us better. So that's I would like to add that as well.
I would also add that if you're talking to a brand new CI leader that's joining a pre-existing group, then trust your team. If they've been working with the system for however long, then they know the system better, and you can learn from them and just kind of enhance what your team is already doing well.
Absolutely. And to answer the question in chat, I would say the question is, so say you've been working as a facilitator, but your supervisor comes from an enterprise mindset. How do you accommodate yourself to the new environment? I would answer that as by saying I would try to meet them halfway and and by that I mean I try to meet with them a lot and try and see what, because the enterprise mindset and the research computing mindset are two very different things. And what I would try to do is say, what can we take from the enterprise mindset that would work, that could help improve our research computing workflow? And I'd try to meet them halfway and try to slowly negotiate I try to negotiate with them to work towards a common ground, if that makes sense.
Anyone else for the scenario in chat? Okay. So our next question is, what are the top 3 things you wish you had known when you first started as a CI facilitator?
Can probably ask that. I mean, answer that question. So the top 3 things I would use is just the importance of building network within the research community, and to stay updated on the latest CI tools and technologies already mentioned earlier, and the importance of strong project management, and also mentioned communication skills and documentation.
Can I jump in?
Of course.
Okay, so there are a number of things, quite a lot of things that are crucial to being a CI facilitators. And for me, one of the most important things is what we call working with resistance, embracing resistance. Always there is some kind of resistance to new technology, to funding, to uh, any kind of thing. So knowing the resistant people and trying to work with them so that we are not at loggerheads, but they are included in providing the solution. So embracing resistance is one of the things that uh, I would highly recommend. The other thing is balancing short-term and long-term goals. So there are certain things we can do in the short term, and also while doing that, while severing the wins, the short-term wins, we should always look for long-term goals. We should always be adaptable. We should always look for emerging technologies and wait for them. We don't have to wait for them, but we have to be anticipating them, and we have to have a smooth transition. So long-term goals and embracing resistance come to mind. Thank you.
And I'd like to add to that with the long-term goals and communicating the need of the users, especially the research groups. So we'll have individual users that may have really unique projects, but let's say we have entire groups that are dedicated towards a technology, and they want to get the facilitation. They want to get the CI facilitation from us to give them the guidance to construct such a system, to even get the price quotes, to get and maybe even do some benchmarking for them. But I think the essential piece before we as facilitators embark on a multi organizational, even a multi-million dollar quest, is to make sure that our upper leadership is involved. We have to make sure, we have our bosses, but the people who make the big decisions need to always be made aware of these big initiatives, because they can be taken by surprise, especially if they're in a meeting amongst their peers, and then all of a sudden this project comes up out of the blue, and we didn't give them an update, and they're like, "So, what's this about?" And so it comes back to us. And so I think as part of being CI facilitators that serve the campus, we have a great responsibility to make sure that our leadership is kept up to speed, and that we allow them to become stakeholders in the decision making process as well. Again, no one's an island. So even though we're facilitators, we're experts in distributed computing and clusters, et cetera, we still need to have that guidance from our leadership. So I would say, as part of what Faseha had said, we have a responsibility to communicate the need, and that need needs to be shared across all levels in the organization within IT.
So just to add on Jerry's idea, having the administration or the big guys behind you means there is the shortest path to red tape. Usually, when you want to implement new ideas, when you want to jump ship, like if you are doing Amazon and all of a sudden, for some technical or enterprise reasons, you want to move to Azure, if you have the administration and the decision makers already abreast, it will be very easy, because it's not always downhill. You have to also look uphill to the people above you and below you, and to bring them together. So having decision makers abreast and informed of everything, and abreast of all the information that they need, is really crucial. I agree completely with Perez, Dr. Perez.
Yeah, and I guess to answer the top three things I wish I had known, one thing I would add to that is just from my perspective as being one of the people in the trenches with as a just a straight facilitator, I'd say one of the things that one of the things that I wish I had known when I was first starting is that this is not an engineering job. It's more like a it's more like the computer equivalent of a healthcare job, if that makes sense. In the sense that you're there to help somebody solve their problem. You're not going to be hiding in a closet programming all day. So for me, I kind of wish I'd realized more how much of the CI facilitator job involved communication and like getting to really know and understand the person and the person's research and and I wish I had understood how much of that was a part of helping the researchers solve their problem. And as I guess essentially I'm saying I wish I had known that it was that the human aspect is just as important as the technical aspect. And basically that if you just want to do the technical aspect to solve the problem, you may end up missing the entire point. So communication matters.
It does matter. And just to generalize, when we say communication, we are saying that we should have the skills to manage group dynamics, to be able to keep discussions on track when we are in a meeting. And while doing that, we should always look forward to inviting new ideas, creative to improve, to embrace creativity, to allow the new ideas to take root, and juggling these and allowing everybody to come on board is really a great facilitation skill, and it should be something that a starting CI facilitator should aspire to master.
And I really love the fact that, we've both identified the major components of CI facilitation. One is communication and the other is technical capability. And so it's very difficult to find that in one individual. So I would have to say anybody who gets into this activity, they're very special to start off with. I mean that in a good way. So congratulations to everybody. If you feel deficient in communication, keep working on it. And if you feel deficient in technology, again, keep working on it, because we're unfinished products. The technology is moving faster than we are. So be nice to yourself. Let your leadership know, hey, I'm on top of it. I'm chasing after the target, and I won't quit. So just assure whoever is in your organization, this is what we're doing, and we're doing the best we can. So and that hopefully will give leadership some expectations, because I think CI facilitation is one of the most misunderstood activities, because again, some people think we're in closets programming. Again, some think we're in meetings having coffee and donuts all day with the users, whereas it's actually a balance between the two. So again, that's where this whole communication between ourselves and our leadership comes in handy, so that we can have the full support of our organizations.
Yeah, add to that what we call impact measurement. Always make sure that you record your achievements, your failures, and your progress. So that will allow you to communicate, and also that will allow you to, like you said, to tell yourself that you are doing the job. Although sometimes it is difficult for others to see it. So it is a good idea to measure your achievements, to record the impacts you have brought onto the institute. So some might be small, some might be big, but put together, that is at the end of the day what will make you feel gratified, because you are the one who knows how much effort you put in it, how much change or how much progress you brought into the system.
There's so much information from just this, and some of this is from personal experience in terms of what we've experienced ourselves. Are there particular circumstances in which we've learned these lessons that we can talk about in the vaguest of sense?
Well, I mean, some of the best things that we can learn from are our failures, especially when you've done everything right. You can still fail. And so in your mind, you're like, well, I did X, Y, and Z, but yet still people are unhappy. People are not satisfied. And so you got to get out of this mindset that, well, I did what I was supposed to do. You know, however other people feel, that's their problem. We can't do that in CI facilitation. We need to understand, why people object, even though we've given them what they want. And of course, this starts bordering into like customer service or total quality management, where you're trying to understand what the real need is. I mean, it may not have been an application. It may have just been them trying to get their work done in a timely fashion. And maybe it wasn't done in a timely fashion, and we overlooked that because the timeline might not have been defined. So again, this also borders into project management. What are the requirements for the project? When is the project due? What are the milestones? With that said, we as CI facilitators have to try to get into the minds of our users, into the minds of our customers, and try to meet them halfway, as Alex would say, meet the people halfway, and so that we can at least get an understanding of what their expectations are. And I would say, in almost any relationship, if you have expectations that are unspoken, someone's going to get disappointed. So this is where I think the common thread here is communication and being able to voice, what is it that the customer needs. And then we have to coach the customer into what they really need. Sometimes they don't really, they just want work done, but they don't know how to vocalize that because sometimes the task is complicated. Sometimes they make it complicated. And then, so as CI facilitators, we're trying to understand what are they trying to do? What are they trying to say? What are they trying to do in their research? Again, that's part of our jobs is trying to decode what they're saying because sometimes they're not really forthright with what they're trying to say. And so again, this is where we hone our communication skills. We listen more and talk less. And of course, we try strategies like mirroring. We try to, discuss with the users, is this what you really meant? And so you just repeat what they say or what they wrote down. And if you get an affirmation, then you're halfway there until something changes midstream. And then you've got to you've got to be nimble and be able to change course. So, yeah. So communication, we keep coming back to communication as a major thread in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this job is the CI facilitator job is a kind of tech support job. And I mean, it can be easy to it can be easy to I don't know what I'm trying to say there. It can be easy to think it can be easy to think it's something else. It can be easy to think it's a high level research. It can be easy to think it's like 12 different things, but essentially it is a research tech support job. And because of that, the customer service and communication is fundamental to get to being to good at to having good outcomes happen.
Yeah, the boundaries are diffuse.
That too,
It,
yes.
it goes in all directions. You just have to handle every situation as it comes and look for, like you said, the middle ground. That's something that works budget-wise, something that works time-wise, something that works technology-wise. It just has to be a mix of all the ingredients that you need to put. So you are a babysitter, you are a healthcare provider, you are like a master, like like I said, the boundaries are diffuse. They are not defined by one single thing.
And I think,
Absolutely.
and I was going to say, one of the most interesting things as a result of that is we end up actually learning the science of our users. I mean, over 20 years, I've learned advanced math, I've learned chemistry, I've learned bioinformatics when it was just barely becoming bioinformatics. And back in 2008, 2009, I helped them author one of the first bioinformatics classes at Texas Tech. So I mean, when you're in this role, I mean, you're on the cutting edge, and
Are you
so
the master of everything?
well, I'm just a PhD in information systems, but when you work with the users, what really helps out a lot is when you understand what they're doing. I mean, not just their code, but I mean the actual science. Before I left UTD, I was really entrenched in quantum computing. And so I learned a lot about how quantum computing works and quantum science. And I'm telling you, it's a different animal than regular computing. But it's a wonderful thing when you're given this opportunity to learn a new field literally every other month with new users and new opportunities. To me, it's a dream job to be able to learn new things, do new things, and it's a great joy to work with the researchers and just to watch their faces light up when everything works.
Yeah, I agree. It's never boring. It's
No,
never boring.
never.
Yeah, it's really important again, like having this soft skill. I mean, we have this technical skills, the soft skill that keep learning and have empathy with users as well. Because some users are really not experienced, so you have to be really, 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 really patient with them,
And
helping them. Yeah.
and sometimes it's an adventure. Do you all remember Higgs looking for the Higgs boson?
Oh
Do
yeah,
y'all remember gravity waves?
I do remember a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was on both teams.
Oh wow.
So yeah, CI facilitators, we're making waves ourselves.
Yeah. Mm.
No kidding. I mean, like you said, it's an incredible learning experience. You get to spend time learning many, many, many different fields. I mean, I learned a little bit about cryo-electron microscopy just this past week because I was just from installing CryoSpark and playing with the tutorial. It was actually really fun. So every time you get to play with a new software, you get to learn a little bit about the science, and every little bit you learn about the science feeds back into helping the users a little bit more.
Yeah, sometimes I thought I was like solving puzzle when users come to us like, hey, I mean, I'm stuck with this like running this job. It's like sometimes I look at it as a puzzle. How do you solve this puzzle? If I can solve it, it's really satisfying. I mean, start satisfying for myself and also, of course, very satisfying when we can help users.
I think that adds on, like, I think we talk a lot about SAI facilitation as like user support, as well as like intake interviews, but another aspect of that is also teaching workshops, and installing software, right? Installing tools that the users will use, and then following up with like documentation. So CI facilitation is just wearing a lot of different hats.
It truly is. And in the coming months at UT Southwestern, we're going to have a training on cloud. I know cloud's being deployed at several universities. They're finally getting several different clouds, Azure, AWS, and so we're going to have some workshops there. And of course, we'll have our CI facilitators there to help our users get used to using it. On top of that, as CI facilitators, we are asked to help introduce some potential new technologies. Last year, I invited IBM to come give a talk on their virtual interfaces on scientific gateways. So we have, as CI facilitators, we have a really grand opportunity to serve our users even before the user comes to us with problems. We can offer them solutions that will brighten their day because they complain about not being able to do certain things. We come with our hands full of solutions. And so if we can have maybe a workshop at least twice a year for our users. And it doesn't necessarily have to be HPC. It could be something that facilitates HPC, scientific gateways, cloud access, access to resources such as storage, or even specialized nodes like GPUs. That in itself is valuable. And so it gives us as CI facilitators a leadership role to help guide our users. One of the for me in my first 10 years in this field, I was being guided by my users. So I was under a lot of stress until I realized that I should be responsible for what I know and turn around and guide them. And that's when my job became fun, because then I was no longer being led by the nose. I was then the one who would provide resources for them to solve their problems, and then give like I used to teach MPI a lot at Texas Tech, so I would do that twice a year. So it's something that it's a mode that you got to get into, right? Once you get enough knowledge under your belt, enough confidence under your belt, that you can then lead and be the shining light for the research. So you can see this transition between being somebody who's trying to figure out what's going on at the university versus somebody who knows and then can then help be that catalyst for change and help the users find better ways of doing their work.
I think that helps too, what you mentioned before of creating that like database of pre-existing users and what software they're using and what field they're working in to also like disseminate that information within the rest of your team of CI facilitators as well.
Yeah, because they're your heavy hitters, and of course they're also going to be the ones who write the grants, the big grants, and you want to make sure they're supported, because it's those grants that help justify the existence of your centers.
That is a great point, and I like it because usually we kind of follow the money. The people come with the money, and we kind of tend to cater to their wish, to their whims. But as a CI facilitator, you know the technology, you know the infrastructure, you know what is good for which. So it requires a certain amount of maturity, like you said, to know what goes where and to assert without without belittling them, to say this is much more fit for your program, and you get the most out of your money. And it takes a certain amount of expertise to reach where we are. So I hope I'll be there in a few years.
So as we're all learning through our CI facilitation experience, and in the spirit of helping our audience learn from our mistakes, so that they can make new mistakes instead of returning to the same old mistakes, what is one of the dumbest mistakes you've made when you were starting out as a CI facilitator, and what did you learn from it?
Can you repeat the question, because you were frozen for me?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay.
Or was it my connection? I don't know.
No, it's okay. It's a long question. So in the spirit of helping our audience learn from their mistakes, so that and our mistakes, so that they can make exciting new mistakes instead of the same old mistakes, what's one of the dumbest mistakes you've made when you were starting out as a CI facilitator, and what did you learn from it?
I want to start. One of my biggest mistakes was expecting somebody to get a task done and not following up on it. I think as the word facilitator really means something. We have to follow through and make sure that the job is done correctly. And one of my mistakes was having expectations that if I asked somebody to do something, it would be done in a way that would help the problem, but it didn't get done correctly, and I didn't follow up, and there were mistakes, and the users got upset. They were disappointed, and there was the whole blame game. Nobody wants to get in trouble, And but if something's done right, everybody wants credit. But definitely, we keep coming back to the communication thing, and but I think there's another level to that, and it's accountability. And that is, if you cannot be accountable for your mistakes, then CI facilitation probably isn't what you're supposed to be, cut out for. So one of the first things I learned was, yeah, it was my mistake, and I lived with it. And fortunately, it wasn't earth-shattering enough to really, get me in big trouble. But it's still big. It had everything to do with uh, our, and this was at the very beginning. Oh my gosh, 2002, 2003. Um, where there was a file server, and I had asked one of our student assistants to replace the fans to the file server because they were failing, and it was full of hard drives, these ancient hard drives, these ancient 100 megabyte hard drives, and so anyway, the fans did not get replaced in enough time. Too many fans failed. The hard drives failed. The RAID wasn't enough to save them, and there was about 2 years worth of data on it. And there was a huge uproar as a result of that. And so one of the things that I learned was, um, if it's something of that nature, I really need to stop what I'm doing and go take care of it. And so that's pretty much what I carried into my whole career, and that is treat everything as very mission critical, especially with data. And so that was my first experience with being yelled at by a department chair, and I had to sit there and take it. And I learned from it, though. I learned a lot of humility from it. So, but I'll also never let that happen again. So it was a good lesson.
Yeah, going off that, we had something similar. This was actually before my time, and I'll get to my personal experiences in a little bit, but we had something similar happen at RCC, I think in 2015 or 2016. There was a hurricane that came through and it knocked the power out. And at the time, RCC was a department like a subgroup of the scientific computing department. And so we had all of our servers in the in this little data center up in the scientific computing department. So it didn't have enough redundancy. And so when it knocked the power out, the chillers went down. And when the chillers went down, the temperature started going up, and eventually the sprinklers went off. And when the sprinklers went off, they fried everything. I don't know if it was everything, but it was close enough to everything. So now we're in our own data center, and we did lose quite a bit of data from that. So now we're in our own data center. We are on we've got a serious backup generator. Um, that thing is a monster. And we've got several different layers of backup chillers, and we've got a kill switch. So if everything goes down, the computers will also go down. One of the biggest issues there was that some of the things had so the cluster had enough compute power had enough backup power upstairs to keep running while the chillers were down, while the chilled air loop was down, and so that's how it overheated itself. It overheated itself, and then the sprinklers did the rest. So I guess my person, I see that a small investment in plastic sheeting at the top of server racks will eventually pay for itself. Whoever wrote that is quite right. Um, so I guess my personal experience with that is so communication is absolutely key. It's very important to own up to your mistakes and own your issues. But one thing I would also say is don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to fail. Um, always try to help the user as much as you can. And it's possible that you will not be able to help the user. I had one situation where this was a couple of years ago where I had a ticket from a user who wanted to install this just giant ball of wax of a program called Voca for it was 3D. It was like automated animation of 3D meshes, and it was basically trying to animate a 3D face based on a sound file of speech. And so it was an absolute mess of a program to try and get installed. And I spent over a year with this user going round and round and round and round and round with it, trying to get it to work, and we just couldn't. So I that could very well have been me being inexperienced, and it could very well have been me being inexperienced, but it could have been the software. But I think in retrospect, that's one of the things to remember with that is sometimes things just will not work out no matter how hard you try. Um, don't let that get you down, and don't let that stop you. What you have to do is own it. Make sure you admit that you say, okay, I cannot figure this out. I can't get it working, and make sure and apologize to the user. And who knows, maybe 3 years from now, I'll look back on it. I'll get another ticket, and I'll go bang my head against the wall because I'll get it working in like 5 minutes. And then I'll be like, why? So the thing to remember is going back to an older point is that we're all a work in progress. We can't be being an expert as I'll steal a quote from Henry on this. Being an expert just means we're 5 minutes ahead of the other people. So that doesn't necessarily mean we're far enough ahead to fix every single problem, but it's important to do your best, try as hard as you can, and remember that you're going to always be learning. You're always going to as you gain more and more experience, you will get better and better and better at the job. And eventually, and who knows, maybe you'll face that same issue again years later. And when you do face that same issue years later, maybe it won't be such a big issue anymore.
The dumbest mistake I made was failing to communicate with the person on the other side. This happened in 2013 or so. I was in New Hampshire. I was in Durham, and there was these people in on the border to Vermont. What was it? I forgot the call it. So the big server was on the other side. I was introduced as the newcomer, and I failed to ask for the specifications. I went back home and I did the wrong thing. And the other guy, who was a very reticent guy who is very hard to talk to, who didn't volunteer because he was expecting me to ask, he was so furious, he insisted on me being fired on the spot. The only thing that saved me was that I was postdoctoral fellow on grant money that the university has nothing to do with. So failing to communicate, to make that everything is rhyming with the other side, that is the biggest mistake I have done. Although the person was very hard to communicate with, I should have barged in and said, what are the specs? So that is one of the dumbest mistakes I have made, and it almost costed me my tenure in the United States. At that time, I didn't even have a green card. So things could have gone wrong, very, very wrong. So asking, not asking is the biggest mistake you can do.
Yeah, I would like to add as well, and not following up with researchers, with users. And it happened, it's not often, but sometimes you have like multiple requests and you are overwhelmed and you forgot to follow up. I mean, you the just because users don't follow up with you doesn't mean that they don't wait for you. So it happened to me like 10 days later. Oh, I haven't followed up with this. So that's it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had that. That's a very common thing with CI facilitators, and I've found myself in that situation plenty of times. You get buried in tickets, buried in requests, and then when you're going back through then when I'm going back through the tickets, I look at the bottom of the ticket list. I'm like, oh, oh no. So yeah, I mean, uh, thankfully, Marcelina's actually been trying to help. It has been trying to implement new strategies to help us get better about that. We've got we've got this new thing where we've got this one of our other application software team people is always doing a ticket audit every 2 weeks. I think he used to do it monthly, but he's doing it every 2 weeks now, and that is so helpful because whenever he does that, um, I think the every 2 weeks was Marcelina's idea, which is good because every 2 weeks that way it doesn't you don't wait too long, and then that way if there's something you haven't replied to, you find out real fast. You're like, oh wait, I gotta answer that. So leadership, I guess leverage your leadership with that when it comes to feeling overwhelmed or having too much to do. Leverage your leadership with that because they can help and they can help you prioritize. They can help you figure out how to balance that.
Thank you for the shout out, Alex. I appreciate it. I think that like actually links up with the probably the last question that we'll have for this panel is now that you all have confessed a mistake, which I can also add mine as well, but I previously mentioned it in the first panel discussion of today, where I had tried to support a user and they asked for they had just changed their asks over multiple times, and then I was unable to help them with their issue. So now we now have guardrails in terms of establishing scope in the beginning of any intake interview and consultation, and I'm sure that would have helped Alex with his initial project as well. So what I guess since Alex has said that implementing that policy is helping, I'll take that as the one of the smart things that I did starting out, like seeing that and implementing that. So what is one of the smartest things you've done as you were starting out as a CI facilitator, whether you realized it at the time or not?
I'll take that one first, and basically just going off of what I said before, I think the smartest thing I've done is really simple. It's just communicate everything you do. Everything you're doing, even if it's not working, communicate it to the researcher. Let the researcher know what you're doing. Let the researcher know what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked. I mean, don't overload them with information, but tell them what you're doing because that way, I mean, even if you think you don't have an update for them this week, you do. You can find an update. And that's been one of the things I've done that I think has really helped a lot was make sure go through the ticket list every week and make sure I've told every one of them something. Um, even if it's really simple, give them proactive responses. Um, give them something to let them know you haven't forgotten about them. Even if it's literally saying that. I haven't forgotten, I swear. So, yeah, exactly. Don't always let them know, even if it's something small. Just let them know that you're still thinking about them and you haven't forgotten.
I concur with Alex. The no update is an update by itself because most researchers would be really, really disappointed. I have been on the other end and saw it. Like you give somebody a task and you don't know whether it is moving, stalling, or regressing. It doesn't matter. The idea is to know that something is being done about it. Like if you have ordered a spare part and you are waiting for it, it's a good thing to communicate so they will have a peace of mind. If you are waiting for a certain patch update and so on, tell them. Because of this, your work or your program has been shelved or stalled, but we didn't forget you. So I like it. The no update is even that is important.
Yeah, to answer the question, what the smartest things I do, I think documenting what I do every day. So because as we already know, we have like many requests, not many, like several requests. Sometimes we tend to forget, but at least having, personal documentation like can be in the Google Docs or something. So like you have something to like, if you don't, I mean, a week from now, you can go back to the note I wrote uh, today, and then oh, I did this during that day. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely with documentation. That's an that's a very, very important thing because before we did lots and lots of documentation, I've had plenty of times where I've done something, then a year later I think, oh, how did I do that? So it helps me too, because otherwise I forget.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, so that's kind of operating procedures for ourselves. Because, like Alex said, what if I forgot what I did? I mean, for some people have this memory where they just remember what they did like 10 years ago. But you got to write stuff down if you want to stay accurate. So be kind to yourself, build your toolkit, and build your SOPs, and then maybe one day when you're ready to call it quits, you can hand it off to somebody.
Very true. Well, I can ask the last question. We've kind of talked a little bit about this as we've gone. The last question is, in your experience, for optimal CI facilitation, what's the balance among needing to understand the following aspects of someone's research? The research topics, the computing intensive and data intensive aspects, the interpersonal skills needed to facilitate effectively, and the context that the research operates in. And I think we've all kind of talked about different aspects of that as being important, but especially the interpersonal skills needing to facilitate the process helps in terms of a lack of knowledge in the research topic specifically or the context that they're operating in. And then, of course, like within that interpersonal skills, we can follow up with more computing intensive and data intensive aspects. I have so does anyone have any input on that? If not, I have a question from chat that we can ask.
Yeah, I think going to chat would be good.
Okay.
I think we've pretty much covered this topic very well,
Right.
and that is we have to have our documentation, we have to have a good relationship, a
Yeah.
good community, but yeah, it has to
So the question in chat is from
be
Maureen.
really.
Oh, so sorry. I'm getting like a delay of Jerry. Is anyone else getting that too? Okay. If you can type your comment in chat, Jerry, then we'll read it because we're having some audio difficulties, I think. But the question from Maureen in chat, which people are answering, is what documentation tools do people use? Since we've talked about documentation greatly, does anyone want to mention any in particular outside of MKDocs? Looks like the most votes in chat so far. I'm also seeing MediaWiki, Discord, Google Docs/Drive, MS Collab, various wikis, Jira, Confluence, and Sphinx with Read the Docs. Oh, perfect. And SharePoint, right.
Yeah, we've been putting all of our master slide decks and a lot of our internal forms, I think, on SharePoint. And it's nice because the university provides it for free.
Yes.
Yeah. But yes, we have for our internal documentation, we have a well, for our user-facing documentation, we have a web server that runs MakeDocs and material for MakeDocs, and I love it because it is literally just typing Markdown, and it's the greatest thing ever. And that's part of why I like using Discord for our internal docs. We have a our team has a small private Discord server that we use for this, and the that's also basically just Markdown, and that's part of why that's why I really like it because it's very easy. It's very easy to convert between the two.
Well, we have 1 minute left, so if anyone has any last thoughts before we end for today. Well, it was great to serve on the panel with everyone. Oh, sorry, Jerry.
I
Go
was
for
going
it.
to say, everybody just keep on keeping on.
Definitely.
Yep, that was a good session.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your leadership, Marcela.
Thank you guys. Yeah, thank you guys for being such a great panel, a constant conversation. And I'm glad to be both the moderator and part of the panel as well. Henry, you can take it away.
All right. Thank you all very much. Let's give our panel a virtual round of applause. And I am just gobsmacked, as the Brits say, by how many chats there have been during this session. I've got a little note here that says 127 new messages. So, 128. So that might be a record for the virtual residency. I'm just super impressed. So thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. That was beautifully done. Let me do a quick program note for tomorrow. We've got 2 sessions tomorrow because it's a half day, because it's Friday, and we know we'd lose you if we ran into this time of the afternoon on a Friday. So Friday, tomorrow morning, the first session is reducing barriers to entry for new users. That's a panel at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, 8 Mountain, 7 Pacific. I'm not going to try to do Alaska or Hawaii or Puerto Rico time on that. And then in the mid-morning, we'll have Stories from the Trenches, which is our roundtable where we all swap tales of tragedy and triumph in our adventures as CI facilitators. So we're looking forward to seeing you all. And remember, we're trying to cross the 300 attendee line. So alert your friends and colleagues that this is an opportunity to have a good brag to the NSF. We were at 293 a little earlier, so we've got a good shot at it. Our chances are good, but we got to have your help to accomplish that. So please help us out. And we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. I forgot to stop the recording, so now there will be a permanent record of me begging people to show up.